This webinar is being recorded. Continue. Okay. So then we did establish a quorum, and good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us at our Zoom transportation working group. And we did establish the quorum. So I'd like to review the process for both the working group members as well as members of the public who wish to speak under public comment. For the working group members, when you'd like to speak, please click the raise your hand symbol. And you have control of your video and your mute. So please turn on your camera when you'd like to speak and we will call on you. Any questions before we continue? Okay, Evelia can provide a quick reminder of how public comments will work. Please, Evelia.
As noted on the cover page of today's meeting agenda, in addition to emailed comments, the public also may provide live comments during today's meeting. To provide a live verbal comment during the meeting, please join the Zoom meeting either by computer or phone. At the time for public comments, members of the public are advised to raise hand. If you wish to provide comments, the raised hand feature can be found on the Zoom toolbar for those who are joining via computer or by entering *9. For those joining via telephone only, the chair will call on members of the public by name of those joining via computer and by the last 3 digits of your telephone number for those joining via telephone. All comments received prior to the close of the meeting will be made part of the meeting record. The instructions for providing live comments also are on the bottom of the cover page of today's meeting agenda, which can be accessed from the homepage of SANDAG's website at www.sandag.org. Comments made by the chat are not considered public comments, so please state your comments out loud.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So again, welcome to another virtual meeting of the Interagency Technical Working Group on Transportation Issues. I think with the rollout of the vaccine and the stabilization of COVID cases, this could be our last Zoom meeting. And so you guys are going to have to get dressed and put on some clothes and get out of your pajamas. And we might meet in person at our next meeting. Before we begin, I would like to call upon Chairman Welch of Verona to start us off with a blessing.
Thank you. Grandfather, we thank you for this day, for this time we get to spend together discussing transportation issues and bettering our communities. We pray for good words, understanding, and fellowship. O ye hun, amaya ha, iyaya hun, ichpe.
Thank you, Chairman. So as Jane and Evelia established a quorum, I would like to introduce a couple of new people we have with us today. The new County Planning Manager, Scott Chrisman. Welcome, Scott. If you're on, I thought I saw you somewhere in here. Yes, Scott Chrisman. And also the Acting Deputy Regional Director, Felix Quito. Is Felix on as well? Yes, there you are. Welcome to you both. And we'll go ahead and get started with the meeting. We have public comments or member comments. Members of the public shall have the opportunity to address the working group on any issues within the jurisdiction of SANDAG that are not on this agenda. Are there any public comments? Evelia and Jane, do you see any public comments or hands raised?
I do not see any hands raised.
I do not.
Okay, so no public comments. But if you did have comments, turn on your camera, unmute yourself. Any comments from the public or the clerk? Nope. So let's continue on with item number 3, which is the approval of the last meeting minutes from January 13th, 2021. Hopefully you all have had an opportunity to review those. If not, take a moment, check them out, and would like to entertain a motion to approve those once you're ready.
Ray offers a motion to approve.
Appreciate that, Ray. Motion on the floor from Viejas. Do I hear a second?
Chairwoman, I second that, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. Second by San Pasqual. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 13th, 2021, please say aye. Aye.
So sorry, Chairwoman, we do need, because this is an interactive, we have to do the roll call.
Okay,
Delia will do that.
so, okay, please do the roll call vote then.
Verona,
Here.
Chairman Welch, Campo, La Jolla, John Beresford, La
Yeah,
Posta,
John Beresford is here. He might not be, he might be on mute.
Okay.
John?
La Jolla, John Beresford, yeah, I see him. He's
Okay,
okay. La Posta, James Hill,
no, he's not here.
Manzanita, Lisa Haas,
No, not here. Mesa Grande is.
Mesa Grande,
I think Mike Linton is here.
Mike Linton with Mesa Grande,
No, apparently not.
Paula Crisnejo, Paula
Yeah, I just,
Crisnejo,
Present.
thank you. Palma, Vanessa Brown, Palma, Vanessa Brown,
no,
Rincon, Joseph Linton,
Here.
San Pasqual, Andrew Orozco,
Aye.
Fiquan, Ania Respoco, sorry.
Here.
Viejas, Reiteran,
Aye.
the motion passes with those present.
Wonderful. So I know after every agenda item, we need public comments. Is that correct, Jane?
correct.
Okay, so are there any public comments? Are there any public comments? Anybody, any member or committee? member wish to speak?
There's no hands raised, Chair Pinto.
Great. Okay. I saw that John Beresford said that he made a comment in the chat that he is here.
Okay,
Does that count as a vote?
yes.
Perfect. Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Yeah, he's on his phone. I think that's the issue. And but I unmuted him.
Wonderful. Okay. So moving right along to item number 4 is the co-chair's report, and Colleen and I have a couple of things to report upon. As the focus today's meeting is about the 2021 regional plan, just want to mention a few things before passing the mic to Colleen. As was mentioned in the SETCA board meeting and several emails, we'd like to update the membership and commitment of tribes to this working group. We appreciate you being here today. And if you're here and not sure if your tribe is officially a member of the working group, I'd suggest sending a new updated appointment letter to Jane Clough, our tribal liaison. Also, we'll be hearing about the 2021 regional plan and how the work that this working group has contributed to its development. So today there's going to be a lot to cover. Again, I appreciate you all being here. A couple other things finally, there's a bill making its way through the legislature. It's the SB 712. This is all in regards to land into trust. When a tribe takes land and puts it into trust and it becomes under their jurisdiction. Well, this is a bill at the state level that would encourage or make the local governments work with the tribes to get your land into trust. So this is a very positive step in the right direction. The hearing's tomorrow. I thought it was going to be today, but it is tomorrow. That's SB 712. Many of the tribes in the state of California have supported this bill by Senator Ben Way, so he is carrying this bill. So this is a great step in the right direction. Here locally, the County Board of Supervisors has talked to all the tribes, and they are going to rescind a 20-year-old policy that the county has where they opposed land into trust. And this is regardless of merit, that they just had this long outdated policy that they abided by. And now they have made some decision to remove this policy, which is another step in the right directions for tribes. So the climate is changing as far as collaborating with the local government and the state. And it's a good day to be Indigenous. It's a good day for the tribes, I believe. And that vote for the rescission of the county policy will take place on May 5th at their next board meeting. So any interested tribes who would like to speak on the matter, please do so. Show support for the county who has agreed to rescind this outdated policy. That's all I have for my update in the co-chair report. And Colleen, I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Just a couple of things. And as the Chairwoman mentioned, we're in the home stretch of releasing the draft 2021 regional plan. And we really appreciate the input that we've received from the tribes and from this working group getting us to the point where we are today. And that's an important agenda item that we look forward to sharing with you. A couple of other things. Many of you may have heard about the work that we're doing with the Navy, the Port of San Diego, Airport, City of San Diego, and Caltrans to develop plans for a central mobility hub at the current Navy Navwar site, otherwise known as the Old Town Center for the Navy. And today we will be releasing a notice of preparation for an environmental impact report to begin that environmental analysis for that project. And we invite the tribes, others, your friends, family, to review that notice of preparation and provide any input or thoughts that you have on things that we need to make sure we're addressing in that environmental analysis. And then just the third thing I wanted to report, our big capital project that we've been working on for the last several years is the Mid-Coast Trolley. And we are on schedule to be able to open the trolley this fall. So if you happen to be in that corridor, the Mid-Coast Trolley is really the extension of the blue line from the Old Town Transit Center up to UCSD. And if you happen to be in that area over the next few months, we're going to start running test runs of the trolley. It won't be open, but we're going to be doing test runs. So if you see the trolley running up there, just know that's what's happening. So anyway, grateful for all of your input and support and look forward to the rest of our meeting today. And I'll let the chairwoman finish her bite of breakfast that's probably very well deserved.
I did two things at once. I can't wait to ride that trolley. I'm going to be there testing it out, Colleen.
Good, very good.
So that concludes our chair report. Are there any public comments, Jane or Avelia, that you can see?
There are no public comments, Chair Pinto.
Okay. So let's move right along to item number 5, which is the 2021 regional plan, moving from vision to plan. And I'll turn it over to Tueri and Allison of Sandag.
Good morning, and it's very much a pleasure for us to be here today with you and have an opportunity to really be able to present on the regional plan. I believe Allison is going to start sharing our presentation, and I'll tell you, we have a lot of content to share, and we're really wanting to take the time to explain everything that's in here, making sure that you understand what's moving forward as part of the plan. And we really look forward to really engaging and having thoughtful discussion with you. So the vision for the 2021 regional plan, it is a big picture strategy to reimagine our transportation future, one that is convenient, equitable, and resilient to change. Today, we are excited to share with you an update on the development of the plan. First, we're going to describe the steps we're taking to create the plan and what you can expect to see in the first half of its implementation. And then we'll share early modeling results that demonstrate that this plan will improve social equity, optimize our transportation network, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We'll wrap it up by breaking down the cost estimates and lay out our funding strategy that will make the regional plan a reality. So now I'm going to go into some of our data-driven approach that we've used. So for this planning cycle, we used a data-driven approach process to really help us understand the transportation needs of the region. Past planning cycles, we have essentially done a refresh of the list of projects that were in the plan prior. In other words, in the past, we used data to validate what we wanted to do. And this time around, we're using data to help us determine what we need to do. This time we started from scratch to define a system from the ground up, using not only traditional data, but using new big data sources that we didn't have access to before to really help solve our transportation challenges in the San Diego region. Part of our data-driven planning process has included gathering community and stakeholder feedback. Just as we're here today, we've engaged with you, our tribal partners, throughout the development of the 2021 regional plan to ensure that the plan we put forward is reflective of your needs and your feedback. And we've done that through periodic summits, workshops, meetings, and a mutual exchange of information. And we really look forward to continuing our collaboration with you as our tribal partners. So these are the 3 goals for the 2021 regional plan. And you may ask, how did we arrive at these goals? By identifying the 3 biggest challenges we need to overcome as a region. Our goal is clear. We must pass a regional plan that makes a transportation system that addresses congestion, improves social equity, and meets our state and federal environmental mandates. And some of those mandates are new, and they're one of the most important things that we have to keep in mind when we're developing this plan. So let's start with that first challenge. The legislation behind the goal of a cleaner network, Senate Bill 375 and the Federal Clean Air Act set important state and federal environmental rules. Title VI outlines federal civil rights requirements and environmental justice. And there is the California Environmental Quality Act and Senate Bill 743, which sets vehicles miles traveled as a benchmark to measure greenhouse gas reductions for automobile emissions. The big takeaway is this: by 2035, we are required to reduce greenhouse gases by 19% per person compared to our 2005 levels. And throughout all of this, tribal consultation is important and something that we're committed to doing, a commitment for effective communication, collaboration, and coordination with you, our tribal partners in this region. So this data-driven process started with where we live and where we work. Work trips account for 1/3 of all trips in the San Diego region. They tend to be the most predictable and cause the greatest peak period congestion and delay. At SANDAG, we've conducted an employment center analysis to understand how people move around and to help us identify the best solution to get people from where they live and where they're trying to go. And we identified about 80 employment centers in the region. These maps start to show how all of this work trip data is overlaid. The region's population density is mapped there as the map shown on the left. The employment centers are shown in the middle, and you can also see it includes our tribal employment centers. And the map on the far right, the purple lines show all of the people from all across the region traveling to their jobs in those employment centers. The darker the line, it means the more trips that are being made for that connection. But we know that work trips are not the only trips that people need to make. So we use big data to understand how and where connections are being made for those non-work trips. We know that tribal nations are not only where people live, but they also serve as major employment centers, and they draw trips from all across our region and beyond. So we looked at trips coming to and from our tribal lands. Our region's popular parks and beaches attract residents and visitors alike. And so we looked at how people are accessing those regions. And our military bases are also major regional employment centers that attract thousands of workers each day. When we look at all of the trips combined, we can start to see that a large portion of those trips are happening in the western third of our region, and a significant number of them are going on our north-south corridors. And so all of this data has become the foundation for the regional plan. So now let's talk about going from the vision into the plan itself. So data and the data that we just talked about help to inform the 5 big moves. There are 5 interreliant strategies for addressing our 3 challenges. They are complete corridors, transit leap, mobility hubs, flexible fleets, and the next operating system. And they work together to complement each other to create one comprehensive system. And it's important to remember that none can be successful without the others, but when they're linked together, the 5 big moves can connect our transportation system in a way that's never been done before. So this illustration demonstrates how a typical highway could be transformed into a complete corridor that creates space for all modes and really leverages technology to keep people and goods moving. Wireless inductive charging infrastructure can be embedded into roadways to facilitate the expansion of clean electric vehicles. In this example, you can see this in a little bit more life, but so what can we reasonably expect to complete by the year of 2035? Starting with our complete corridors, we're proposing a network of managed lanes on all of our major highways. These managed lanes would be dynamically managed, priced through our next operating system, or the next OS, and they will provide infrastructure for a robust transit system, which is part of our transit leap, while also managing congestion overall to facilitate the movement of our goods and emergency response in our region. We all know that a significant portion of the San Diego regional economy relies on efficient movement of goods, both by trucks and rail. And that's why by 2035, the improvements in the low sand corridor and activating the next OS in our complete corridors is so important. In addition, the plan proposes completing a state-of-the-art international border crossing at Otay Mesa East. For our rural corridors, by 2035, it's about the use of technology and the next operating system and constructing safety improvements included in the complete corridors. This includes straightening curves, constructing passing lanes, making intersection improvements, and providing emergency evacuation routes to ensure that people are able to exit when we have wildfires or other emergencies. More detailed planning is already underway for State Route 67, for example. The exact nature of the improvements will be determined through a comprehensive multimodal corridor planning process that is currently being conducted by SANDAG and Caltrans. For our tribal lands, we have already provided funding to advance projects that tribes included in their Intraregional Tribal Transportation Strategy, and this work is being done in collaboration with the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association. The last 2 times we spoke to you, we talked about the goals and the objectives and the projects that were part of that strategy, and taking into consideration all of the work and collaboration the tribes put into developing it. We're really proud to show that those projects that had regional significance have been integrated into this regional plan. And so seen here is in the summary table are the rural corridor projects that are included in the first half of the plan for 2035. Really, you can see that they're focused on increasing safety, access, and improving that travel reliability for our rural corridors that serve the tribal nations in your lands. And now I'll turn it over to Allison to talk about flexible fleets.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Tueri. So several of the improvements that we've mentioned so far, including in the rural corridors, support flexible fleets. And flexible fleets come in many forms. These are services that are on demand. They're there when you need them. And they're also shared, so they can save people the cost of having to invest in their own vehicle. They also vary in size from bikes to scooters to shuttles, so they can really be customized to the community. We have some existing examples to build upon, like ride-hailing apps, Uber and Lyft, private shuttles to destinations, and commuter shuttles that connect transit to nearby employment. We imagine flexible fleets adapting to technology, things like self-driving vehicles, AI, or other things that we haven't even thought of yet. In rural parts of the county where it doesn't make sense to build a new transit line, this is where flexible fleets come in to offer more options and increase accessibility to more remote communities. Mobility hubs and flexible fleets really work together to support a variety of mobility needs. Mobility hub areas are the pink areas on the map, and these are places with a concentration of mobility options. They include transit centers, employment centers, residential areas, other destinations within our communities. It's important to note that these are the regional mobility hub areas. We envision smaller mobility hubs taking place throughout our region as well, especially in some of our rural communities. The flexible fleets can help facilitate access to mobility hubs. This color here shows a 10-minute flexible fleet access to transit. But as I described, flexible fleets can also operate anywhere throughout the region. Now let's dive into the Transit Leap network. The full range of Transit Leap services are integrated with dedicated space on highways and local roads, so they can offer a fast and reliable service. We're envisioning a network of high-speed commuter rail, light rail, expanded rapid bus service, and enhancements to our local bus service. Starting with the complete corridors, managed lanes are shown in green on this map. So as Tuari mentioned, many of the managed lanes on our highway system we're expecting to be built by 2035. And then our extensive rapid transit network is shown in purple on the map. And this service would operate at minimum 10-minute frequencies and offer all day or 20-hour service. Not shown on this map, but very important to the transit system are improvements to our existing local bus and light rail or trolley service. There are local buses that serve more rural areas of the region, and our plan includes increased frequencies across the local bus and trolley system, as well as transit fare subsidies that make these options more affordable. Second, within the 2035 timeframe, complete improvements for passenger rail and freight in our Los Angeles to San Diego or Losan corridor. We'd be completing double tracking and moving tracks off of the Del Mar Bluffs. And third part of the Transit Leap proposed to be completed by 2035 is high-speed commuter rail line from National City to Kearney Mesa in Sereno Valley. This particular portion of the commuter rail line is known as the Purple Line or the Jobs Train because it connects residents from some of our most disadvantaged communities to our region's major employment centers and higher education. The regional plan is also about more than transportation. This plan will include a land use pattern that focuses growth primarily in the mobility hub areas and aligns with other state policies like the Regional Housing Needs Assessment or RHNA, which is also a requirement of Senate Bill 375. That's why you'll see in this plan an affordable housing program that will bring more resources to address the housing crisis in our region. And for our tribal partners too, we want to continue to partner with you on applying for available funding opportunities, providing data or other technical resources to support your planning efforts as well. And through our MOU with the SCTCA, we feel that we can move forward on connecting environmental and cultural resource issues as well. What happens on our local streets and roads is critical for the success of the entire system. And having a safe place to walk, jog, or hop on a bicycle is a major factor of quality of life for all of us. We're planning for investments in infrastructure, programs, and a new e-bike incentive program to make active trips and connections to transit easier. And this would all be supporting Vision Zero efforts across the region. By 2035, it's projected that 1 in 5 people will be driving an electric vehicle and that all new cars will be zero emission. So we're planning for the infrastructure to support this shift. We're planning for funding to support electrification of vehicles of all shapes and sizes, including our bus fleets and goods movement vehicles by 2035. As with many parts of the state, we are already experiencing impacts of climate change, including heat waves, drought, increased wildfire risk, and sea level rise in our coastal areas. Improving our resilience is a collaborative process across agencies, tribal nations, and communities, and we're integrating climate resilience into our planning and projects. We've also included funding in this plan for programs that will continue our work on climate action planning and expand resources on climate adaptation, including nature-based climate solutions. And tribal nations are critical partners in this work. The next OS, or the next operating system, is about making the system work using data and technology to manage how lanes are used in real time depending on changing demand. At certain hours of the day, lanes could be dedicated to freight or transit. Or when there's an accident, lanes can be restricted to emergency vehicles. Managing the system this way reduces stop and go conditions that contribute to greater vehicle emissions too. The next OS also connects people to transportation services in new ways. This is also why our work on expanding access to broadband is so important, and tribal input has been vital to this effort too. Reliable internet is not only important for education, healthcare, and quality of life, it will also be increasingly important for accessing transportation services. Finally, another key program area that is necessary for us to achieve our greenhouse gas reduction target is congestion management and value-based pricing. Our Sandag iCommute team has supported numerous employers, including tribal enterprises in the region, with demand management programs like promoting telework, carpooling, incentives, and offering van pool subsidies. Value-based pricing includes pricing like you've seen on our existing managed lanes. It's a system that is dynamic and responsive to roadway conditions. We're also committed to ensuring that value-based pricing is done equitably and takes into consideration our low-income communities throughout the region. The 5 big moves will take the form of a complete multimodal system throughout the region. Looking out to the year 2050, we're talking about a system of managed lanes, critical improvements on our rural corridors, high-speed commuter rail in the highest demand areas, and improvements to our light rail system, a dramatic expansion of our rapid transit systems, and mobility hubs that will transform our urban form, creating vibrant centers of activity and flexible fleets to connect all parts of the region. And this complete system is optimized with the next OS. And the details of this system are available for all to review on our Sandag Regional Plan data viewer. So here's how the vision comes together. I'm going to talk now about some of the preliminary modeling results. As we move from vision to plan, the focus of our data science team at Sandag changes from providing data and analysis, developing the 5 big moves like Tuere talked about, to really looking at analytics that quantify the performance and benefits of the proposed plan. So let's take a look at some of the preliminary results we could get from these investments. To make our system faster, the regional plan focuses on optimizing the current infrastructure and reducing congestion during peak periods. To make our system fairer, the regional plan increases access to transit and employment centers with new technology and concepts like mobility hubs, flexible fleets, and the next operating system. And to make our system cleaner, the regional plan will ensure we meet the GHG goals mandated by Senate Bill 375. First thing we do is analyze the network. So peak period work trips are the trips that contribute most to congestion in our region. As shown in this graph, in 2016, the base year of our plan, 80% of San Diegans commuted along to work. 13% carpooled, 3% used transit, and another 3% either bike or walk to work. As a comparison, by 2050, the prior regional plan was only able to reduce drive alone percentage by 5% from 80 to 75. But if we implement this plan, we could reduce the drive alone percentage to 67% in 2035. We also see carpooling increasing to 16% and a threefold increase in transit usage due to better accessibility and more frequent services targeted at the optimal origins and destinations. Much of the active network will be built out by 2035 as well, which doubles our bike and walk trips. As you can see, by 2050, these metrics continue to improve through the extent of the plan. Our new data-driven approach allowed us to objectively look at where people live and work. The map on the left shows where more than 50% of people work, and the map on the right shows where the vast majority of people live. It's no surprise that these areas are all located in the western 1/3 of the region. And the new plan calls for infrastructure that ties all of these areas of activity in the region together in a more cohesive and flexible way. One of the shortcomings of our current transportation system is that not enough people have reasonable access to an alternative to driving alone. Approximately 10% of our region's residents have access to an alternative, and this is true for all populations, including low-income people at 12%, minorities at 10%, and seniors at 8%. With the investments in the complete corridors and transit leap strategy, this increases not only the number of opportunities for people to take alternatives to driving alone, but also the quality of the service. It's faster, more frequent, and more accessible. And this triples access to alternative forms of transportation in the region by 2035. And we see improvements in all impacted communities. Again, these numbers continue to improve through 2050, the horizon year of the plan. Another shortcoming of our transportation system is that we don't have alternatives that are competitive to driving alone in terms of time. Some of the longest transit trips people take today are to get to their jobs. In some cases, people spend as much as 2 hours or more to get from home to their place of employment. A faster transit system supported by complete corridors and flexible fleets allows a much larger portion of our population to get to work in a reasonable amount of time. So let's look at transit access to our Tier 1 employment centers. These are the blue areas on the map and contain most of our corporate headquarters, manufacturing, government jobs. This is where 328,000 people work, or 22% of jobs in the region. Currently, only 25% of low income and 22% of minority populations can get to these areas on transit within 30 minutes. And 44% of low income and 41% of minority populations have access within 45 minutes. By 2035, our system will provide significant improvements so that many more people have access to transit. And as you can see, these numbers continue to grow through 2050, when 64% of our low-income population and 60% of minority will have access to Tier 1 employment centers within 45 minutes. Now we're looking at Tier 2 employment centers. This is where another 300,000 people are employed, or 1 in 5 jobs in the region. Tier 2 employment centers are anchored by retail and hospitals. The commutes to these jobs are typically shorter as people live closer to their place of employment. Currently, about half of low income and minorities can access Tier 2 employment centers within 30 minutes using our existing system. By 2035, the plan increases access within 30 minutes to 65% for low income populations and 60% for minorities. Again, by 2050, we continue to see improvements. If we look at access within 45 minutes, 85% of low income and 81% of minorities are able to take transit to a Tier 2 employment center within 45 minutes. As you can see, these initial results are very promising, and we're confident that we've designed a system that addresses congestion and social equity while meeting our greenhouse gas emission targets. So at this point, I'm going to hand the presentation back to Tueri, and she'll discuss some of the cost and funding aspects of the regional plan.
Thanks, Allison. So now we'll move on to funding and our cost estimates. And you have probably heard our executive director, Hassan, say that this plan is going to cost a lot of money. And he's right. Every regional plan every regional plan that SANDAG has ever created proposed major investments. And we estimate that this one will cost about $163 billion. This estimate is actually 14 billion less than what we reported last year. And this reduction is a result of eliminating a large rail segment that didn't meet our performance measures, and by reducing the footprint of some of our managed lanes. So today we'll break down the cost and we will lay out a funding strategy that makes this plan a reality. Our goal here is to be fully transparent. If we're going to ask the region's residents to make an investment to support a better transportation future, they need to know all the assumptions going in. Again, it's estimated that the regional plan, the 2021 regional plan, will cost approximately $163 billion. By comparison, the regional plan approved by the SANDAG Board of Directors in 2015 had an estimated cost of $130 billion. Comparing the two plans, investments in capital projects increased by 38% from $63.7 billion in the 2015 plan to $87.7 billion in the 2021 plan. This increase is the result of rethinking the infrastructure investments, which include the new high-speed commuter rail and the full managed lane system. Additionally, there is a 20% increase in operation expenditures to support the larger transit network, as well as the managed lane system. There's also a 50% increase in programs for things like the commuter incentives, active transportation, affordable housing, and the mobility hub development that you heard Allison speak about. So breaking the cost down further, this chart that's coming up shows the cost estimates by category for the 2015 plan. The categories are sorted from largest to smallest in terms of expenditure. The green bars represent the anticipated cost by category in the 2021 regional plan. Focusing on the major differences, you can see a big increase proposed in the transit capital, doubling our investments from $25.9 billion in the 2015 plan to $55.5 billion in the 2021 plan. There's also significant increase in freeway operations and maintenance expenditures, increasing from $10 billion to $18.6 billion. And there are some new areas of expenditure that did not exist in the 2015 plan. We're proposing $500 million for goods movement, $4.8 billion for transit fare subsidies. This would be for youth and low-income populations, $5 billion for mobility hubs and flexible fleets, and $200 million for the next operating system. Many of these improvements are the ones which tribal nations could benefit from. So now moving on to funding. So this slide is going to show you the anticipated revenues by funding strategy that were used in the 2015 plan. You can see here in the blue. The majority of the revenues, 53%, come from state and federal formula funds and Transnet revenues. In the 2021 plan, shown in the green bars here, these same revenue sources represent only 38% of the total funding. You'll notice that the 2021 plan proposes larger increases in other sources, including road user charges, a VMT fee, potential future local sales tax, and managed lanes tolls. And there are several new categories of revenues that were not considered in the 2015 plan, and they include future potential fees on rideshare and future regional VMT fees. So this table provides information on some of the key revenue sources. In the 2021 plan, we had assumed a 1/4-cent sales tax adopted sometime in the future. It is estimated that this would have generated $7 billion. In the 2021 plan, we're assuming a 1/2 cents regional sales tax and a 1/2 cents MTS service area sales tax, which together are anticipated to generate $18 billion. Next, A new fee placed on transportation network companies would generate an estimated $2 billion for the 2021 plan. Transportation network company fees is a new category this time around that would apply to rideshare companies. They often contribute to vehicle miles traveled in the region, and this fee is similar to programs we see in other jurisdictions like San Francisco, implementing it to address the congestion on their roadways. Road user fees have been included in both plans. The 2015 plan included a statewide fee of 1 cent per mile, and the 2021 plan includes a 2 cents per mile statewide mileage fee, as well as a 2 cents per mile regional mileage fee expected to generate $18 billion. And this strategy supports a transition from the dependence on gas taxes to fund transportation and offers a locally controlled source of funding to address our local priorities. State housing revenue for transportation is a new funding stream based on 2019 legislation, and it's assumed to start in 2026, contributing $4 billion for regional investments. And we see a significant bump in revenue from managed lanes through the expanded regional network that we proposed and spoke about earlier. Revenues would be used to support capital and operation costs for the entire transportation system, including transit and active transportation. And we expect a $12 billion revenue increase for a total of $13 billion compared to the 2015 plan. And finally, $8 billion in the state high-speed rail revenue was removed from our assumptions as the San Diego segment, our assumptions for the San Diego segment. And we're assuming that that is going to be paid for by the state. So there is no easy answer on how to fund a transportation system that addresses all of the three challenges we spoke about. It's going to require a combination of strategies as we've laid out here. What we've put together today represents the latest thinking in the state of practice, and we believe this is a strategy that could be accepted by the federal agencies as a path forward for this plan, allowing the region to continue to receive the critical federal funding that we get. And a funding strategy is a federal requirement for our regional plan, like the 2015 plan. It too had a federally mandated funding strategy that was approved by the SANDAG board. And a lot more work will definitely be needed to bring any of these strategies to fruition. Further studies, enabling legislation, and voter approval would all be necessary. All of these steps will require further board input from SANDAG's board of directors, public debate, and more discussions with our stakeholders like you. So the strategy that we've laid out allows us to meet our federal mandate for the regional plan, and it gives us a good place to start for a regional discussion. So I know it was a lot of information that we went through today from both the 2035 as well as the revenues and the funding. But if that wasn't enough information for you, we also have more workshops planned like this to ensure that we're sharing all of the details of the draft plan before it's released in May. At our board meeting this Friday, April 23rd, we're going to be going through our social equity analysis and our planning framework around that. That will be used going forward to ensure that equity is at the forefront of everything that we do. On April 30th, we're going to come back to our board and we'll focus on how the regional plan supports local planning efforts and our shared goals around climate, housing, and mobility. And then on May 28th is when we come back to present the draft 2021 regional plan and ask the SANDAG board of directors to release it for public review. So all of these board meetings, which include participation of an SCTCA tribal representative, are available on SANDAG's YouTube channel after each meeting. And then last thing I'll just lay out is after we release the draft plan in this spring, we'll release the draft environmental impact report for public review and comment this summer. And then we're also planning for many opportunities within this time frame to engage with the public and our key stakeholders this summer, which includes coming back to the tribal working group. So maybe, as our chair said, possibly in person, and incorporate the feedback before we ask the SANDAG board to consider any adoption of the plan and certifying the environmental impact report this fall. So that concludes our presentation, and we definitely look forward to taking any of your questions, comments, or receiving further input and feedback.
Thank you, Tweri. Thank you, Allison. Every time I see this plan, I'm just in awe of all the pieces that are coming together and the attempt to bring our region together via high-speed trains, to connect to people, to education opportunities, to jobs. The one thing that really gets me is this is going to force me to buy a battery operated vehicle to where I can drive on that thing, where I can charge. I'm just in awe of the work that Sandag has done under the executive director and the staff. This is wonderful. So are there any public comments, Jane or Avelia?
There are none, Chair Minto.
Okay. No questions, no anything. Gosh, that was a lot of excellent.
Although, sorry to interrupt you, there is a panelist with the hand raised for you. And that would be Andrew Orozco.
Andrew, please.
Hi, I want to, echo Chair Pinto's thoughts. I thought it was a great presentation, a lot of information. And, we appreciate your efforts and your coordination with the working group. Just a couple of questions. And, I know this, we're working a lot of the details on this plan. So I just want to ask, as far as the initial, it's data driven, how was the data collected, especially in the rural areas?
Yeah, so I'll start off with answering your question. So the data was collected through a variety of different means. Some of it is census data. And so it comes from, the government and providing that for us. And that's available for anyone who uses information from the census. And then the other data that was the new and more innovative approach that we've taken is that we actually have cellular data that allows us to understand where some of the trips are happening throughout our region. And so that is how come we were able to really look at our military bases, our tribal lands, and some specific activity centers throughout the region to really understand more than just the work trips, which is where people live and where they work. And so those are one of the two main data sources that we used throughout this. And then obviously through, having data accountability, we take that data and then we validate that by, communicating and talking with our stakeholders, talking with the public, and really understanding that the data that we've collected makes sense with what we're hearing from them as well.
Gotcha. Thank you. The next question is probably for Allison because she presented on this. Climate resiliency. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit as far as a little bit more specifics and as the solutions that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, so we have, climate resilience, we think about this holistically, that it can really be incorporated into many different parts of our planning. So as we design infrastructure and the transportation system, considering things like sea level rise for our coastal infrastructure, for example, as we analyze the solutions for State Route 67 and other rural corridors, how can we ensure that those solutions are providing appropriate accommodations for emergency situations. So those are some ways that we're incorporating it at the transportation infrastructure level. And then we also look at collaborative solutions. So just being able to continue ongoing conversations and working together on our planning efforts to ensure we're using the latest data, we're coordinating on different solutions for our communities. We see that that's a big role that Sandag can continue to play as well, and just providing that access to data. One other key program that we're proposing in this plan is a nature-based climate solutions program. So it would really bring together programs like our environmental mitigation program, ways to address stormwater issues, other open space preservation type activities under kind of one umbrella of climate solutions. So hopefully that sheds some light. It's still, high level framework at the regional plan level, but something we want to continue to work on.
Gotcha. And I got one more question, Chair Pinto, if you don't mind. So, the next OS is obviously exciting prospect for us in the rural communities. And so I know that we're looking at infrastructure improvements in our rural corridors. And we had hoped that that would include, connectivity. There's obviously a big disparity there as compared to rural communities to the more urban. And so, we really want to try and take advantage of any opportunities we can to bring more connectivity to our areas in the east portion of the region.
Yeah, no, that's a really great comment. And we agree with you that we do need to look at the digital divide. And you may have seen, and I believe our Director of Mobility and Innovation, Antoinette Meyer, came to this working group in December to talk about the digital divide. But as part of the Next OS and the 2021 plan and what we're looking for in that first half of the plan for 2035, we are looking at those technology investments and really putting some of the technology infrastructure investments that need to be made on those rural corridors, as well as for enabling support for the managed lane. So that is the early half of the plan. And that does include the rural corridors for that. And that includes smart intersections, active transportation demand management. And so the full technology suite that really needs to make Next OS become a reality.
Well, again, appreciate it.
Sorry to interrupt, Chairman Pinto. We also have a member from La Jolla that would like to speak and wanted to let you know.
Thank you so much. I do see Paula and I do see La Jolla, so we can go ahead and start with La Jolla and then Paula.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairwoman Pinto. We have two questions. Where could we get an updated list of road projects that will affect the tribes in the area? That's one question. And then also, is there consideration for adding public transportation in the backcountry area? Because currently Highway 76 from where it joins at S6 all the way to the 79 has no public transportation availability. And so we would hope that that stretch of road would be considered, as well as the Los Coyotes Indian Reservation, which kind of goes back out to Warner Springs area, has no public transportation either.
Okay, well, I'll start with, thank you for the question. For the updated list of road projects, at the regional plan scale, we can send you the list of projects, and I can send that to our tribal liaison, Jane, to send out to the group. It is available online, but we'll send it as a link so that it's very easy for you to access. And we're more than happy to, set up a time if you have any questions about any of the specific projects. For the public transportation, something that is not highlighted in this presentation is all of the local bus routes. And so we highlighted the rail projects, the commuter rail, the light rail, as well as the next generation rapid, but there is another layer of transit for the local routes. And so the local routes also we're looking at, and this would be within the North County Transit District service area that you're specifically asking for. And so I know that they are looking at how they can do an adaptive model that would look more like what our flexible fleets Five Big Move looks like, and really providing that on-demand service. So we'd have to go back and look specifically at the route you're asking about to see if there is a local route that provides service in the proposed plan. But if not, I certainly think that the opportunity is there with flexible fleets. And we know that our partners in North County are looking at how they can offer that service so that it's more on demand and available for people who need it, as they have more of the typical situations in the rural parts of our region where they don't need regular service operating at regular intervals, as it is they need people to be available when they're needed. But we can provide more information about the local routes for you on that as well.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Vice Chair, does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. And next, Paula, I saw Paula's hand up. Jeremy?
Yeah, it's Jeremy. Yeah, excellent presentation at the second Andrew on that, and it was really good, and I think I've seen parts of it before, and it's kind of expanded, and I can tell, yeah, a lot of work and thought went into it. I'm wondering kind of a couple things. One, from a procedural kind of standpoint, you know, how much, what's the possibility of large changes being made to the plan and or budget from between now and the time that it's implemented, especially with regards to, you know, tribal interests and all that. And so I guess putting that more simply would be, you know, if tribes have issues, concerns, or, you know, things that they would want changed, and they were able to come to a consensus on that, you know, is there time and the will to change large budget items in large areas within the plan?
Okay,
You want
thank you
me
for
to
that.
jump in on that?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, sure, Colleen.
So
Thanks.
Jeremy, that's a really good question. And right now we've scoped out this whole plan, and we've drafted the environmental impact analysis.
Right.
So
And that's why I kind of brought that up.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I think it depends. It depends on what is being proposed. If the large scale change would not change our model results, so it wouldn't change, say,
right,
our greenhouse gas reductions, or substantially change like the equity aspect in the wrong direction, those are the kinds of things we could consider. Even if there were another sort of cost increase, I think those are things that we could consider. At the same time, I don't want to give the impression that we could do significant changes. What we would probably have to do is figure out what could we do within the scope of what's been done so far. And then this plan gets updated every 4 years.
right.
So we could wrap some of those things into a future update. So that's how I would answer it in the abstract. If you had specific things, we'd love to sit down and talk with you about them to see how we would love to address as much as we can up front now. We just have to figure out what we can do within the scope of time that we have between now and when our board legally has to adopt this at the end of the calendar year.
Right. And then another question that's probably more theoretical, or you know, more out of the box, so to speak, would be, you know, we do a lot of work. Obviously, climate change adaptation is really popular item right now, and there's also mandates, you know, concerning it. But I do wonder, kind of out loud, what the wisdom of, you know, spending lots of money to kind of plan when, you know, for instance, sea level rise is mentioned, and, you know, the largest estimates are like, you know, a meter of sea level rise, which I, you know, obviously I'm not minimizing that, but it's over many decades. And I just wonder, like, that I'm assuming that is included because it's mandated, and not because we think it's really a great idea. Although I'm not trying to say it's not a great idea. I just kind of question the strategy, I guess.
Yeah, it is. These are all mandated things that we have to do. You're on the nose with that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Jeremy, are there any other hands raised, Jane or Ivella?
I do not see any other hands raised.
No, there are no hands raised, Chair Pinto. Thank you.
So is this where we have to go into public comment?
Yes.
Okay.
You always have to say that, yeah.
Okay, public comment, any public comment on this agenda item?
No public comments.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Tueri. Thank you, Allison. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and move on to item number 6, which is the Interregional Tribal Transportation Strategy. And here today to present is Michael Connolly and Matt Horton to share the upcoming technical update of the ITTS and developing strategic action plan. Michael?
Thank
Matt.
you, Chairwoman Pinto. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. I had a little trouble on my, kept bouncing off and back on there. We have, as most of the members of the working group are aware, we have some funding to assist us with the regional plan update through SANDAG. And we've been using that to cover several different topics that were listed in part of the meetings that we've had over the past. One of the components that we're looking at updating through that funding is the Intraregional Tribal Transportation Strategy, which was mentioned earlier. Another part of that, it's related, and it's an add-on that was in the previous regional plan, were the tribal individual long-range transportation plans for the individual tribes. We meaning Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association, hired Kimley Horn as a consultant to assist us in doing the update on the ITTS, and also if perhaps helping in some ways on the LRTP, although the primary purpose is the ITTS. And a lot of the information within those plans is dated, and to give you a better understanding of how this is going to be approached by Kimley Horn, we have Matt Horton, who was one of the original people who worked on the ITTS development 5 years ago. We were fortunate enough to get him on board, as he's still working there with Kimley Horn. So with that, I will turn it over to Matt and let him lay out what the plan is for this.
Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you, Chairwoman Pinto, for having me here today. So if we go to the next slide, please. So looking forward, I think that this update is happening obviously at a very thoughtful time in the regional transportation planning process, with all of the things that we just heard today that SANDAG and the region are planning. So today I want to talk a little bit again, just get everyone up to speed on what has happened previously and historically with tribal transportation planning through the context of the Interregional Tribal Transportation Strategy. Why are we updating it now? What our timeline and process look like over the next few months, and then what lives beyond the update of this project. Next slide, please. So just a brief refresher, I have a couple slides here. In 2018, the first ITTS was published to identify those key multimodal transportation projects that address all of the varied mobility needs of tribal communities in San Diego County. We had an action plan that laid out various steps to achieve the goals and the project list set aside in the first ITTS, and also identified various funding sources that were available to tribes looking forward as we work on this transportation project program. And finally, it took, there was a lot of coordination and efforts from all levels, including all 17 tribal nations, San Diego County, SCTCA, the county, NCTD, MTS, Caltrans, and BIA. So it was a very collaborative process and a very strong and solid document that this group has continued forward with and has generated several successes. Next slide, please. There were four major key components of the previous document. There's a very robust existing conditions component that went over the existing needs, the demographics, the existing infrastructure. The next major section was the specific mobility needs, not identified necessarily broadly by the data, but by each individual tribe and the working group, as described by tribal membership. That needs assessment eventually resulted in a very large inventory of projects, the specific line item needs as expressed through infrastructure and programmatic improvements to address those needs. And finally, as I mentioned previously, a comprehensive list of action steps and a specific strategy to get this program of projects done. Next slide, please. Through the creation of the ITTS, there were several kind of top line overarching needs and considerations that we identified through these goal areas for transportation improvements. Should come as no shock or reminder to everyone that safety and roadway conditions, as well as connectivity that Andrew mentioned previously, were really hot button items that the program of projects seeks to address. The actual survey that we conducted, again, had those identified specific transportation needs as identified through a project inventory with over 120 projects identified. Next slide, please. All of this data generated through the previous needs assessment was expressed in a very large kind of working model that identifies not only the specific projects where they're located, but also a large component of cost, both capital and operations and maintenance. And all together, we had a very large amount of need as expressed through dollars. To put into context with Sandag's plan in the hundreds of billions, for tribal needs alone expressed through this program of projects was over $3 billion. So need was great in tribal areas and continues to be great moving forward. Next slide, please. Then finally, the strategies that the group identified as important steps moving forward to continue to collaborate to improve transportation conditions in tribal areas. The support partnerships and collaboration, and I think the continued success of this working group is a strong and solid example of how that strategy is being advanced forward. Coordinated and collaborative planning, the very act of updating the ITTS as well as integrating with regional planning projects, the CMCP processes, and all of the other various regional planning efforts show again how strategy 2 continues to be a strong priority of this group. Data sharing supporting tribal transportation, an acknowledgement that data drives financing and funding considerations, as we'll talk about in a future slide. And as was identified in the previous presentation, there are projects that are getting done, and through continued collaboration and deep dive into specific projects, there has been funding that has been brought to tribal areas and will continue to come to tribal areas based on the robust data that is getting generated. And finally, continue to create and find funding opportunities. There are a lot of dollars available for transportation projects, not only at the local and regional level, but also at the state and federal level. And we'll continue as we look forward to updating the ITTS document, look for those funding strategies that are constantly evolving, but are widely or present specific high opportunities for us to bring outside dollars into the region to assess and alleviate tribal transportation needs. Next slide, please. So when we look forward to this specific document and the update, these 5 bullets represent the key components, what we're really going to be focusing on. And that's going to be to re-identify the transportation priorities to be communicated in the next regional plan. Another consolidated and updated look through the perspective of tribal communities as to what needs to be emphasized, what is the unified voice of tribal communities, and what is the emphasis that wants to be placed in the regional plan through that perspective. We'll go into the big giant project list, all 126 projects, and reassess whether this continues to reflect the transportation needs of the community, whether projects need to fall off, whether additional projects need to be added or programs refined. Because cost is such an important component of funding strategies, we will update all project costs to current dollars and make sure that those reflect the most accurate cost estimates as we look forward to grant applications and asks of funding partners. We'll also reassess the strategies, the 4 strategies that I had discussed earlier, to see if there's additional depth or additional strategies that could be added to that to refine, again, the message coming out of tribal areas as it relates to transportation need, and perhaps add some additional strategies that make the path a little bit more discrete. What are the early action items, midterm action items, and longer term needs as they're expressed through the plan? And finally, acknowledge the very real successes that have been achieved since the previous plan was adopted, those projects that have been completed, those collaborative efforts that have been undertaken, and those partnerships that have been reinforced as we look forward, learning from those successes and maybe some of the things that didn't go so well, and projecting those forward into the plan update. Next slide, please. So with all the things that are happening at the regional level right now, it's important through this project that we get up to speed quickly. So we have a relatively aggressive timeline to completion here with an end goal in late summer. Early this spring and over the next couple months, we'll be working with each tribal community to update the needs assessment and review any sort of planning studies that have been completed since the last time we reviewed all of the transportation related materials for tribal communities. Early in the summer, we'll take this updated needs assessment and dive into the weeds of the data, assign various project attributes, refine project scopes, and update all cost estimates. Later in the summer, we'll be updating the inventory and maps for internal consumption. This is going to be the macro model that Sandag is currently operating with, as well as an updated suite of maps to quickly identify where this project need is most concentrated. And finally, in the late summer, we're going to be re-engaging in a very collaborative process as a larger group to help refine those strategies and the specific messaging that the update wants to contain, to clearly communicate to the region what the needs of tribal communities are as it relates to transportation, as well as the steps forward beyond this update process, how continued successes can be directed to our communities. Next slide, please. So what's next? There's a lot there. The ITTS document is out there, and I would encourage any stakeholder who's likely to be a part of this process to get a refresher what it says about each of their individual communities to help provide more effective input as we move forward. Immediately after this call, each of the representatives listed for this working group will receive an email from one of my colleagues at Kinley Horn asking for your tribal representation at a 1-hour workshop where we'll be conducting a one-on-one interview with representatives from each tribal community and go over the previous project inventory identified by your tribal membership and walk through any alterations that are necessary to reflect the existing conditions and the existing needs of the tribe. This could be anything from, again, filling potholes and upgrading roadway condition on various segments, all the way to maybe very large infrastructure improvements. I know the 76 has a dangerous curve that continues to be an issue. So we want to validate previously identified issues, but then also identify those new issues that have been emerging. I will make a shameless pitch right now. After hearing all of these Sandag presentations, I would encourage attendees to these meetings to think broadly, creatively, and at a time horizon that's commensurate with the regional plan. So 2035 and beyond. This could be things like flexible fleets implementation. This is intelligent transportation systems. This is electric vehicles. Think about ways that maybe some of these emerging or advanced technologies, which in the future won't be so emerging and won't be so advanced, how these technologies can help better and improve quality of life in the rural areas of the county and on tribal reservations. A great example that was brought up with Paula was the kind of flex route transit service, right? I think that's definitely a type of program or service looking forward that I would expect to see a little bit more frequently in the next ITTS update as that technology continues to evolve. Besides attendance and a little bit of thinking before these meetings, I would also ask that each tribe contemplate and inventory all of the transportation related documents that have been completed since the last time we did the ITTS update. So anything, let's call it 2016, 2017 until now, and collect all of that planning work, whether it be a transportation safety plan, whether it be an environmental mitigation plan, mobility plans, resiliency plans. As someone who's been involved in the creation of some of these documents, I know they exist. So when we get to those meetings where we're having a one-on-one conversation, to the extent that we and the project team can be up to speed on all of the thinking that has gone into transportation related components over the last few years, we'll be able to have that much more of an informed conversation with our brief workshop. So with that, thank you for everyone's time. I'm really excited to plug into this. It was awesome working and see a lot of familiar faces from our previous effort. And I look forward to updating the ITTS document. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Matt. Thank you, Mike. Are there any committee member comments or questions?
There is one hand raised, Chair Pinto.
Sure.
Andrew Orozco.
Is it Andrew?
Yes.
Take it away, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair Pinto. Good to see you, Matt, even with your mask on. Glad you're on board with this update. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things, because when we went through this first process of gathering data from all the tribes, that was probably one of the most important pieces. And so that's going to be critical to the success of this update. So I was hoping that number one, in this email that you're going to send out, if there's a way that you could send the original survey that they submitted. We have some new committee members may not have participated in the original document. So I think that would be helpful and kind of prep them for the conversation or meeting that you're going to have. And also the ITTS itself. Some members may not have that. I know it's available on the SANDAG website, but if you could share that with them as well. And I really encourage the committee members to take a look at the document. This, as Matt said, this was done in a very thoughtful way. This was really our plan and what we wanted to see as far as our priorities and whatnot. So, the strategy number 4, which was identifying funding opportunities, we wanted to take it a step further. Not only did we identify it, how do you go about that? What is the timing on that? And so, so I think that's a very important piece of the document, and I encourage all the committee members to take a look at that strategy, number 4. And as Matt said, the reality is the region is going towards these 5 big moves. So I think there's an opportunity there for all of us to take advantage of that and really tailor it to our needs. Tribal mobility hubs, activity, goods movement, things of that nature. So, so I'm very excited to get going on this update. Was curious if there's any, if there's going to be the project screening tool update, or is it just the document?
So that's a great question. And before I answer that, thank you for the comments on the email. I'll be sure to include all of the data tables related to the projects previously identified, synthesized map or a summary map specific to each individual tribe, as well as a link to the previous ITTS document. Your comment related to the screening tool, yes, it is in our scope to update the various components of the screening tool. The previous Excel model or macro model that some of you may or may not be familiar with, but that's something that's in SANDAG's possession right now, that had various kind of screening criteria, the project size, what funding programs it likely aligns with. all of that will be updated as part of this process, both for existing projects, as some of those funding criteria have changed slightly, as well as for newly identified project needs that are going to be added to the inventory. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Andrew. We do have another hand up, Ray Terran from Viejas.
Thank you, Chairman. Andrew, like usual, is spot on. My question was going to be on the screening mechanism, whether that was going to be available again, because I've gone and looked at it and used it a couple of times. And if we're going to be changing anything, I'd sure like to be able to go back in and do some queries on that also.
Great, thanks for that comment. And yes, I think there'll be an opportunity not only for us to update that, but also potentially to take a look at what was working as part of the screening tool and maybe what could be improved upon. So I think that's definitely was an important component of the first ITTS go around, will remain an important tool moving forward, especially as we look for alignment with funding sources. Thank you.
Okay, any other committee member have questions or comments? I don't see anything.
No.
Any public comments, Avelia?
No, Chair Pinto, there's no other hands raised for public comments.
Okay. So as your last slide states, remember to turn in your long-range transportation plans to Jane Clough, and she will handle that. So any questions refer them to Jane Clough. This brings us to our final item, number 7. Topics, date for the next meeting. As our 2021 regional plan will be released for public comment on May 28, 2021. The meeting should fall within the comment period to ensure dialogue. So should the state and county health directives restrictions be lifted by then, the next meeting may occur in person, as I mentioned earlier. So are there any topics that anybody would like for the next meeting?
There is a hand raised, Chair Pinto,
Okay.
from one of the panels.
Who was the hand? Ray, is that your hand again?
Yes, it is, Chair. I just think maybe this would be a good time to start thinking about discussing the strategy for supporting any kind of funding mechanisms that are being proposed in the regional plan. A couple of the items, the half-cent sales tax and the half-cent or the sales tax and the gas tax items, I think some of those didn't pass because I don't think there was a consistent message put out there. And if we're going to be addressing all these transportation issues, we're not going to get all the funds from the feds, so we're going to have to probably fund it, through whatever mechanisms we have here. So that only starts with a good strategy on how we deliver the message for that. So maybe that might be a topic for one of our future meetings.
May I,
Please,
Chair? That's an excellent point, Ray, and we would love to strategize with this group as well as the SCTCA just around general messaging with the plan. I, as a public servant, and Jane and the others from Sandag have to be really careful about if we're working on, say, messaging around a campaign. But we can talk with you about how do we really describe the regional plan in a way that's meaningful to people, in a way that's meaningful to tribes, in a way that's meaningful to the groups that you all represent. So we would love to have that on a future topic, because that's really, as we go out to the public and start talking more about the plan, we got to get these messages right. So thank you for that question. And if we could craft something like that on the agenda, I'd love to work with the chair to do that.
Absolutely. And thank you, Ray. Any other committee member comments before we go into public comments?
I don't see any hands raised, Chair Pinto.
Okay, thank you very much. No public comments either. Okay. Remember, submit those long-range transportation plans, the summaries, and then we'll look on the calendar to schedule our next meeting. Is that July, Jane?
Yes, so if we can do that in July, that'll give an opportunity for public comment on the draft plan that's within the public comment period. So looking at dates. Let's see. So
July 28th, look on the calendar, because the July 21st is that big NIGA trade show. It's in Vegas.
okay. Yep. So possibly the 14th or the 28th.
28th preferably.
28th.
Verona says 28th works.
Perfect. Thank you, Chairman. Does it work for everybody else?
And the time, is the time 10 to noon?
10 to noon. Do you want to, it's 10 to noon, and do you want to give a place or a location just in case we meet in person?
Yes, it sounds so fun. I want to see you guys.
Yeah.
Is it the north or the south that hosts this go around, Jane?
It's been so long, I'm not even sure.
Right? Does anybody on the call want to host us tentatively?
So, yeah, so.
Excuse me, Chair Pinto, there's a hand raised by Ray Teran in Viejas.
And I also wanted to just comment about the public comment period ends at the end of July. So it might be better to have it earlier in June. So there's really an opportunity for input. Do we want to?
Like June 30th?
Yeah, let's see. Is June 30th a Wednesday?
June 30th is a Wednesday.
Yes. Yeah, that would be preferable, I think.
Okay. Does that work for the committee? June 30th, it's a Wednesday.
And Ray Teran sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but Ray Teran had his hand.
Ray, the floor is yours, Ray.
Okay, thank you. No, just whatever date you nail down, Viejas will host the meeting.
Oh, you're wonderful.
Super.
Thank you. Okay. June 30th, does that work for the committee? 30th is good for Rincon. I appreciate that. Is it good for everybody else on the call? Rafael, I see your little face. Andrew, is it good for you? Thumbs up.
Yes, for Verona.
Thank you again, Chairman. Okay, we're gonna nail that down, that date then to June 30th.
From
10
to noon. At Viejas from 10 to noon.
Yes, and that is tentative in person until we feel, I guess, because I guess the state's going to open up June 15th, correct? Is that still on track?
That's what we're hearing. Yep.
Okay, we'll play it by ear, and I really appreciate that. Ray and Viejas, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that'll conclude our meeting for the day, unless there's anything else anybody'd like to say. Andrew, your hand's raised, Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Chair Pinto. Just a couple of things. As far as the regional plan, I know Jane has reached out a couple of times to tribes to submit their LRTPs, whether it be summary or a plan that you have in place. Jane, can you remind me again of the drop dead date for tribes? Was it the 23rd?
It's this Friday.
This Friday.
Yeah, but if there are tribes that are almost there and need some more time, it really is drop dead deadline, but communicate with me if you're in the middle of it and there's issues.
Gotcha. So this is, just to clarify, this is in addition to the ITTS that's going to be included in the regional plan. Individual tribes have the opportunity to submit their individual LRTPs.
Correct, or a summary statement.
Or summary,
that could be that we've sent out a kit, and there are several tribes that did one in 2015. There are 12 tribes did them in 2015, and we've set out a packet for those, for everyone to be able to do a summary, which is a couple pages with And there's a template that we've submitted to the SCTCA. Everyone has that, but if you need the information again, we can send it out again.
Great. Thank you, Jane. And then one more thing. Next Tuesday is the Tribal Transportation Program Coordinating Committee meeting, virtual. It'll be from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. our time here. Jane, I'll work with you on getting that agenda out to the group, but really useful information. We always get an update from Leroy Gishi with BIA and Aaron Kinley at Federal Highways on status of TTP, where we're at with the continuing resolution, because FASTAC ended. So there's a lot of useful information. So I'd encourage all the committee members to attend that meeting.
So, and Chairwoman Pinto, I just had one additional piece of information. We did send out a link to the digital divide. There's a workshop on smart cities and the digital divide tomorrow. And just to let everyone know that they're more than welcome to participate. It's we discussing the digital divide. In January, Antoinette Mayer came to the working group and discussed this broad initiative for bridging the digital divide. They've set up a task force, and the SCTCA is represented there by their lead IT person, Matt.
Tannen.
Yes.
Okay.
And the gap analysis from a survey was done on the gap analysis of what are the issues with all the jurisdictions, including tribes, and there's going to be a panel and discussing best practices and the issues and the results of the gap analysis. So just wanted to, it's a virtual, it's at from 9 to 11 tomorrow morning.
Yes, I look forward to seeing you all there. Any other closing comments before we adjourn?
I just have one comment, Chair Pinto. I have a motorcycle jacket that I think is older than you are.
Yeah, you
If
missed
we're in person, we've all got to wear our jackets, right? We'll wear our jackets to the next meeting, anyone who has one.
Let's do it. Okay, so I do appreciate all of your time today, and be safe. Continue to practice your social distancing until we open up the state in June, and I look forward to seeing you all in June. Okay, take care. Eat something
Take
good.
care. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.